welcome to the WDW News Today podcast. My name's Eric Morton. Tom Corliss.
Yeah, that's me.
Obviously.
I'm all thrown off because like half the room is gone.
Our typical podcast infrastructure has been relocated to a secret offsite facility in anticipation for our MuppetVision 3D event coming
That
up this
secret offsite facility is the Embassy Suites Lake Buena Vista Resort.
Yeah,
Well,
so
by the time you're watching this, that doesn't matter.
you did hit the tripod. I don't know if that moved the camera, Katie. We are recording on like a little vlogger camera with little wireless lavs. Hopefully this works just fine and everybody can hear us and see us and we can talk about stuff. We can't do this live right now due to our technology constraints today.
But it's more important that the Muppet event has streamed, and by the time you're watching this, you will know if it worked or not. So,
oh boy. I'm talking now to the people of the future. Let us know if we've been dragged across the internet for messing up the streaming at the Muppet
I'm sure
event.
Our and Billy have it under control.
I believe in you.
This will
Katie.
not. This is a very different regime than previous events. We'll be okay.
Our last episode, we talked about Epic Universe. The one before that, we talked about the Disneyland 70th. We brought back the snack segment. I'm interested to know, did you finish the green Pringles? The hot ones Pringles.
Yeah.
I finished the first red ones, but not the second red ones. I went on a road trip. I was on a long road trip over the weekend, and so I still got some left. But the good thing about a road trip is that you get to stop places and get new snacks for the show. You ready? You want to do some snacks?
Yeah, sure.
All right, I got two.
Yeah.
Two.
Okay.
Nana's favorite. We went to Buc-ee's.
Yeah, Nana recommended these, right?
No,
Oh, you just meant Buc-ee's in general.
but just
I thought she had that. I don't know. Were you the one that tried?
I was the one that has tried
okay.
these, and they are fantastic. But
I have
first one
now.
you've talked about this.
If you watched, actually, I've done this on camera. If you watch the Hilton Head vlogs, which are on the TV channel, we stopped at Buc-ee's and I tried a couple of snacks. I was very excited about jalapeno peanut brittle, and I had a whole story about jalapeno peanut brittle from Disneyland, which is no longer available. This is a bad piece. Can I
Here,
trade?
you pick whatever.
It's
piece you want.
mostly brittle and not peanut.
Is that your complaint that it's too brittle?
That was like just the clump of
Yeah.
sugar. Oh my God. I see one with peanut. I'm trying to get it. That's
There
a
you go.
giant piece.
That's
though.
a chunky one.
There we go. There's peanut in that.
All right, you ready?
Sure.
Cheers.
It's no good.
Brittle down.
No, I know I'm a Disney person. I understand that. But I don't think I really had peanut brittle in my life until my first trip to Disneyland. People said, oh, you should get the peanut brittle. And I fell in love with it. And since then, I was like, oh, I love peanut brittle. And I go places, I'll get peanut brittle. And anywhere I've ever had it, I've been disappointed.
This isn't spicy.
No, it's like a jalapeno aftertaste, but also the brittle itself is bad. There's not enough nut. What do you call the stuff in between?
The brittle, the sugar.
Yeah, but it has like they're no good.
The candy. I actually like their regular peanut brittle at Buc-ee's.
Yeah?
I don't think this is as good.
No, it's
And I'm
bad.
not getting that jalapeno taste at all.
It's a 1 out of 7.
I'll give it a 2 just because it's better than no peanut brittle at all. All right, but the waffle cones with milk chocolate, so these are like the bottom of a drumstick.
He doesn't mean like on a bird.
No, this is like
Ice cream.
back when, like now these are the best part of a drumstick because drumsticks are bad now.
What did they ruin about the rest of the drumstick?
You don't know this?
No.
It's no longer
I don't eat
ice
them
cream.
often.
It's no longer ice cream.
What is it?
Read the package of your drumstick. It's called a frozen dairy treat. It's not called ice cream. You leave it out, it won't melt. It has that weird processed stuff. It's just not good. They changed it, I don't know, a decade ago or something. This is, the bottom is
They're
always
all
good,
different
though.
flavor? Oh, no, they're all milk chocolate.
No, these are just like a waffle cone and the chocolate in the bottom.
This is like on Seinfeld when they figured out they could sell just the top of the muffin. Well, who's not going to like that? But it loses something when it's not cold. You got to put those in the fridge.
Probably right.
It's still
think
very
it's a
good.
6 or a 7.
I think it's a 5, and I bet if we put them in the fridge, it's a 7.
You're probably right. Hey, Katie, go put these in the fridge, and we'll just try to talk for like 2 hours. Put them in the freezer. We'll try to talk for like 2 hours and drag this podcast out as long as we can, just so we can have this payoff at the end. No?
Probably in an hour, they'll be fine.
Yeah.
I bet in an hour, they'll be fine. Bye. Now that Katie's gone.
That's a snazzy shirt you're wearing there, Tom.
Yours too.
Where can we get shirts like
Oh,
these?
I think at carouselofproducts.com. In
Carouselofproducts.com.
fact, our 3 brand new shirts, if you buy them in a bundle, you save money. Although the bundle's probably quickly, it may even be over now. We might be out of Muppet shirts by the time this airs. So do keep in mind. I think I'm safe. I think it's safe to say we still have this, which is Spaceship Sunset. It's Spaceship Earth at sunset. It's safe to say we still have limited quantities of the Tip Top Club.
Very few of these.
Yes, those are running low. And then we also have the Space Mountain 50th anniversary.
I have found that these run about a little tight, so
Go a size
when in doubt, size up.
Size up, yep.
So these are
Get them
what a
at
great deal.
carouselproducts.com. You get a discount if you're a WIGS member. Do you want to tell them about WIGS?
Yeah, so WIGS member, that's our Patreon group, the WWNT
Well, I
Inner
said
Globe
from a
Society. You can go to patreon.com/WWNT. Or, if you're real wild, you can go to WWNT.com/Patreon. Either way, you can learn about all the different benefits of being a WIGS member. We really appreciate those who support us and support content like this. And we do give them discounts and things like that on our shop. Discount to events. Early access is a big thing, right? We've had times when the WIGS kind of gobbled up all the early access to certain things we've done.
Yeah.
And so we really appreciate the WIGS out there. Normally, in most instances, if we had our studio equipment here, they would get to, most of the WIGS would get to join us and watch us record this live.
Yeah.
But because we're recording this on like a little vlogger camera and all of our equipment is gone and the room is empty, we don't have the same ability to live stream. We could have done it, I guess, on a phone
week
next to
we'll
here or
be
something.
back to
But
normal. Although you're gone, when do you leave?
I leave next Thursday.
Okay, so next week we'll have.
You want to try to record one more next week? Yeah.
We should, yeah. And then maybe I'll try to do a couple without you.
Then I will vlog my way around the globe. You vlog your way halfway around the globe, and we'll meet in the middle.
Yep.
All right, cool.
In Hong Kong.
What a great idea, Tom. Let's go to Hong Kong.
I love Hong Kong. It's my favorite.
I've never been in a
I mean, Tokyo's my favorite, but Hong Kong's great.
Oh
You're getting
no, I have a
phone
call.
We're doing a show.
Don't people know that?
How dare they? Yeah, we're definitely on. We're not on live. That's why they don't know, because we're not on live right now.
Nobody knows. It's a secret.
So, do you want to introduce the?
No, you could.
Okay.
It's your. I mean, honestly, you are very, very in touch with this topic because you sat on a very long conference call about this. You helped direct our editorial effort on this whole thing, and it's one of the biggest things going on in the Disney community right now. It's one of the biggest topics of conversation.
Well, this what a crazy week. This will be last week by the time you're watching this, but last week, not only did MuppetVision 3D close forever, we got a closing date for the Rivers of America, which would include Tom Sawyer Island and the Liberty Square Riverboat, which will be July 6th. So you get 1 month. Within 1 month, you'll lose MuppetVision and all of the Rivers of America. Katie's back from putting things in the fridge.
Thank you, Katie.
So that was announced. Also, the railroad, they were adamant. I love in the middle of the call, they're just like, just so you know, the railroad's not closing, but we're going to close the Frontierland train station and we're going to run the train shuttle. And I got very excited because when I was a young lad, my first memories of the train, period, are it running backwards because Splash Mountain was under construction. So I got all excited. I was like, oh, I'll get to ride it backwards again.
Oh, the train ride.
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the point of getting on a train if you're not going somewhere? You know, just to go backwards.
You can go
and
to
forward.
Fantasyland.
I guess. Go to Fantasyland.
And then
Shuttle mode.
well, I guess I imagine it'll have to go forward to Main Street and backwards to Fantasyland.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what they're going to do?
Well, they have to, it doesn't make sense to let's turn the trains around and go that way. The train's got a point. When you come into the park, the train's got to come this way.
It can only go clockwise.
Yeah. You can't go. Well, it's going to go the other way, but it does that, backward. The train's got a point that to the left. It has to.
Well, Should be a good time. Now the train's going to be a thrilling attraction like Expedition Everest, where you go backwards.
They're adding an inversion.
The line is going to be super long. They're putting in a Yeti. This one moves.
I mean, there are more things on Everest that move than the Walt Disney World Railroad. I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to get a lot of hate mail today. I hate the Walt Disney World Railroad. It's the worst one. There's nothing to look at. There's no interesting scenes. It has no scenes. There's nothing to look at except trees and swamp. I guess you can kind of see
Native
some of
American village?
a little bit, but actually the Hong Kong Railroad's real bad.
So we'll skip that one?
No, you should still see it.
Okay.
It's weird. So last time I went to Hong Kong, or was it when Frozen opened? It was when Frozen opened. That was my first time on their train because it was closed for several years to build World of Frozen.
I'm very excited because I did buy my Hong Kong annual pass. So I am now an annual pass holder at 3 Disney resorts. That's pretty good for me, right? There is only 4 where you can get the.
That's
annual
all
pass,
I've
right?
got right now. I mean,
Can you get it in Shanghai?
you can.
Okay, so then
I did not.
You can't get it in Japan.
Japan, it's gone. In Paris, I had it, but I haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, if you're curious, I think the gold level annual pass for Hong Kong is like $350.
It wasn't. Yeah.
It's not much.
Oh,
compared
you
to-
bought gold?
I think I needed those days or something like that. Was I
Is
supposed
it
to?
platinum?
I don't know what it is.
I hope you bought the right one and you're not blocked out. We'll have to double.
I think I looked and I'm not blacked out, but
Okay,
maybe
just
it's
making
platinum.
sure.
I don't know. Whatever it was like $350. If I have to change it, I'm sure they'll let me change it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
I'm sure I'm not just going to go into another country, apply my own social norms to what my expectations would be, and expect them to.
They would fix it for you. It wouldn't be like Japan, where Japan would fix it for you after a 2-hour ordeal at a window. But in Hong Kong,
And you'd have to apologize.
at
and
Hong Kong, it would be fixed in 5 to 10 minutes. Yeah, but
I don't know. I'm excited. I'm ready. A lot of other stuff in between now and then. But anyway, back to the Rivers of America.
Yeah.
To Frontierland.
what do you think? Because everyone's heard what I think.
I struggle with this because I am one of the people, I know you don't agree with me. I am one of the people that enjoys the vibe of walking along the Rivers of America. Like if I'm walking through Frontierland, I walk down onto the wooden part along the Rivers of America.
Yeah.
And look at it and gaze upon it and enjoy the noises and sights and sounds and all that kind of stuff of the Rivers of America. I want to have some level of faith that that won't be completely ruined by what they do. And I think what people think is that you're going to walk there and there's going to be a picket fence and there's going to be like cars rip-roaring by there, you know, and it sounds like that is not what's going to happen.
The primary focus of the call was, hey, we're not going to ruin everything. Like, hey, there's a lot of water, and hey, there's a lot of rock work, and hey, you're not going to see Piston Peak from the Hall of Presidents, and you're not going to hear cars, you know, zooming by while, you know, standing at the Liberty Tree.
Yeah, I mean, it is hard to control those sort of sounds in a theme park. So what that tells me is that they expect this ride system to be pretty quiet.
Well, I don't know about
I can
that.
tell
I
you,
think it's
there are
about
a
the
number of
bird.
things that I can hear from my front yard
Yeah.
in the Magic Kingdom.
Yeah.
So the idea that you can keep that noise pollution down, I mean,
Well, they're not real cars, right? So
Yeah.
you control via speakers, the placement of speakers, the pitch of they said the pitch of the ride track, the barriers they'll build, which there is a lot of rock work blocking
Yeah.
Liberty Square. And then the audio mix, they were like, we can turn up the sound where we want and turn it down where we don't want it. So they're very cognizant of the possible issues. I think they know it's important to not visually or audibly intrude in the rest of Frontierland or in Liberty Square.
I like to think, and you might not agree with this, but I think like Grizzly Peak at DCA does a really good job of dividing that park without even you noticing that it's doing that. I think Disney has traditionally been pretty good at this.
Yeah.
Where I can walk in there and not really realize that there's a whole area back on the other side of this peak, right? And I imagine they're going to use some of the same principles and some of the same design principles of that. But it really does make DCA. You don't really, you can kind of stay in it at DCA. You might not want to, You might not want to stay in all of that because DCA has some weaknesses, Pixar Pier and things like that. But
Yeah.
in general, I think that use of Grizzly Peak there is really good and
Yeah.
positive. And I think, yeah, you can't. I mean, when you're in other parts, when you're right along that performance corridor, you can't hear anything that's going on in Grizzly Peak, and you can't hear.
You don't hear the people screaming on that ride.
Yeah.
All
So
you hear is the waterfall, which is on that side,
yeah.
which does not ruin that side.
That could be used to maybe help mask that sound. By the way,
Well, that's
the
where
crashing of the waterfall.
there is a waterfall on the Liberty Square side specifically.
Yeah, I don't even know where you want to start on all these things that they revealed to you.
Well, I'm just curious how you felt about it in total.
No, sorry. I am going to miss it. I will say I love that Tom Sawyer Island exists. I love the in the back of my mind knowing there's this kind of weird, quiet, secluded place that I can go to in this like park that's full of tens of thousands of people and kind of get away from it all and relax.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of even solitude in some of those places. And I admit that I don't go out there very often, right? I'm not every trip to Magic Kingdom running out there to the rafts and going over the island and exploring the caves and going out to the fort and all those types of things. So I understand that that's very valuable real estate when it comes to something like an expansion. As someone who kind of lives near there, I kind of thought there seems to be a lot of room to expand if they want to just go back there where they could leave the rivers of America alone. But I guess they determined that that was a poor use of, resources. And I'm going to miss, look, if you live here or if you go to Disney a lot, they drain that river every now and then. Just a few years ago, they took the riverboat out, floated it. It was kind of cool. They take it down that canal where the water pageant goes. They take it across the Seven Seas Lagoon. They take it across the water bridge by Contemporary. They take it up Bay Lake to kind of dock it and work on it. I mean, it's a pretty cool production for them to do that. But you've seen, then they drain the rivers of America, and it's, for lack of a better term, it doesn't appear natural, right? It appears then it's very clear this is man-made.
Yeah.
Not only is there a track there, but everything kind of slopes towards it, and you're very much like it's kind of a magic ruining moment, right? You see that, and there's no way they can stop you from seeing that. But at the same time, it has become a habitat for things like ducks and fish and other things. And
Bears.
A bear at least once. And so I'll miss that, right? I'll miss any place you can see ducks because we just talked
those
about
ducks will get into these water features.
they'll figure it out. But I would say we just got done talking about Epic Universe and all their use of water in Celestial Park.
Yeah.
But the use of water in Celestial Park there is has an appearance of being beautiful yet man-made.
Yeah, none of it's
Artificial.
natural.
It doesn't
It's all flat.
blend into nature, right? It's not like you have real water features. You have fountains that are created by them with cascading waterfalls and this type of stuff. I think that's pretty. But I think there's also something to be said for the natural beauty.
Oh, yeah.
Even in this sort of artificial environment where it's not, there's still some nature to it, right? It's still a habitat. And so I'll miss that. And it is going to be a shrinking habitat for a lot of animals, and people are worried about that, all this kind of stuff. But I just think the pleasant stroll of being inside this busy theme park and looking at a place that sort of evokes thoughts of solitude and peace and quiet is nice, and I will miss that. That doesn't mean that I'm going to chain myself to it.
Yeah, look, here's the thing about Disney World. There are things that are intrinsically connected to the DNA of Walt Disney World. The Country Bear Jamboree was designed for Mineral King, didn't happen, and they decided to slot it into Disney World, one of the few original attractions when the park opened. Hall of Presidents, Walt Disney really wanted that. He never got to do it at Disneyland, and then when they were building Disney World, it was an opportunity to finally do it. And his brother made sure it happened, and his brother then passed away just weeks later after achieving Walt's last big dream. Those are things, even the Polynesian, Fort Wilderness, which both of those we could have lengthy conversations how I think they've ruined those in a lot of ways. And the Contemporary for that matter too, as far as the Incredibles thing and all of that. Those are the things that they are specifically the DNA of Walt Disney World. Epcot Center, and in many ways a lot of original Disney MGM studios, the Great Movie Ride, MuppetVision, those even Rock and Roller Coaster, they are things that were born and bred in that space. and they make up the DNA of those places and not the DNA of any other place. Although they cloned Rock and Roller Coaster eventually, but it wasn't the same. Tower of Terror, same thing, where like those things belong there forever because they characterize that park.
Space Mountain, yeah.
Space Mountain.
Yeah.
Disney World's the original. That it characterized Disney World for a long time and still does. Those things are important. I don't know that I feel that way about almost anything that began at Disneyland and then was carbon copied in a way for Disney World. I don't know that I feel that connection. It doesn't feel special. And I think the problem is once you go see the other parks that have a river and you see how much more there is to see, how well maintained it is, that a lot of them still operate a canoe attraction. That's the thing, like, my whole life has been watching the river die. In 1994, they got rid of the canoes. In 2001, they got rid of the Mike Fink keel boats. Tom Sawyer Island used to have a lot more stuff on it, and it just vanished in time. If you go there now, they abandoned it a long time ago.
They got rid of the paintbrush thing.
The
years
paths
ago.
look like they're real close to caving in some spots. It's like, yeah, it's not. And even Tokyo, where it is, look, it's meticulously maintained and it's beautiful. But you go to Tokyo and you ride the raft over, and there's a handful of children playing on a rock, and it's like, oh, this is a throwback to Walt's time, but at the same time, it is very clear that its time has passed. It's very clear that and Disneyland tried to reinvigorate it. They tried Pirate's Lair. It worked for a minute, but now it's basically what it was before, where a couple people meander over there, and it's, it's a fun space to spend a couple minutes. But people do it once, and then they're like, oh, we got to ride that raft. We got to take that raft over there. As opposed to Disneyland, where, look, at Disneyland, otherwise, the Mark Twain and the Columbia, tons of people ride them. They have a lot of charm. They have a ton of historic value. Those are Walt Disney's vessels. They had their anniversary party on the Mark Twain. There is so much history to those vessels and that river. Please tell me what the history is of our river.
Well, you could make the argument that the history is, these things that you don't like about it are more due to neglect than anything else, right? The reason that the rivers of America are important at Disneyland are not just historical, but it's because they use it. Yeah. Right? That place is alive. Like you said, the canoes. You have the canoes, you have the Columbia, you have the Mark Twain. It's part of the show of Fantasmic itself. They use it right.
Yeah.
Right? It is a center of activity for that park. Yeah. And Disneyland, while it is smaller than the Magic Kingdom, really does a great job of maximizing these little spaces that they have. And Disney World doesn't. But what it has become then is a peaceful place. Yeah. And for me, that is worth something, even though you understand from a business standpoint, it's always in a high-risk location because of the nature of things.
I don't know how you maintain large, peaceful spaces in parks that need capacity. You brought up Epic Universe. Epic Universe is struggling. When they let 14,000 people in that park, it struggles. People have nothing to do. And while Celestial Park is a wonderful place to sit for a little while, eventually people have to do something. And there's not enough to do in Celestial Park. There's not enough interior spaces. There's not enough dining capacity. There's sure as hell not enough ride capacity. So yeah, I like Celestial Park. I like stopping and taking a moment to look out at the fountains. And you can only stop for a moment in the middle of the summer because there's no shade. There are two little huts on one side of the fountain, and that's about it. As opposed to, look, like Tom Sawyer Island has lots of nice shady places and lots of seating, and that's great. It was great when it was functional and when it meant something to guests. I think a number of things are true where, yeah, if the river was more alive, maybe more people would enjoy it. But at Tokyo, it's alive, and I love it in Japan. I love the amount of, you have Splash Mountain up against the river, and this beautiful spot at the turn in the river, and the riverboat sitting there, and you see the canoes go by, and it's very alive. And the train is also against, like the train is not in the woods so much for most of that ride. It's actually on a bridge adjacent to the river. And so there's so much kinetic energy and so much life. But at the same time, you look at that park and how busy it is, and you see how few people are enjoying those things, and you can't help but think like this park would really benefit from a lot more to do, and it's going to happen. If Tokyo is looking at the Jungle Cruise and the Tiki Room and the Treehouse and saying, this doesn't serve our purpose anymore, we're going to bulldoze this and start over, what do you think is next?
Yeah, I still wonder with Japan. Like, I haven't been to Japan. I don't have as deep an understanding of Japanese culture as a lot of people. But what I do know is that they like to honor things that have been around for a long time. There's a whole art form that is mending things that are broken, that somehow makes them more beautiful, the care that you've shown them, and things like that. And I don't know they're going to discard these things. It looks like it, maybe, but that's hard to say.
I think in a world where they bulldozed the original Space Mountain, they've now told you they intend to bulldoze a majority of Adventureland. I would dare say the rivers of America are next on that list.
Yeah. Back to Disney World, though, and I've said time and time again, I feel like it would have benefited from some sort of pedestrian drawbridge or some way to make it easier for people to get out there. Because not only is it kind of a pain to get out there, but it's kind of a pain to get back.
Yeah.
And in fact, if you ride out there on the raft, at least the last time I did, they don't let you just ride back. You actually have to get off the raft, go back, get to the back of the line that doesn't exist, and then like reboard and stuff. It's a little weird, right? Look, in a world where the people mover, where you can just sit there and go like this, and they go, yeah, go ahead and stay there and keep riding the people mover all day. It's weird that they're so particular about it there. The rafts are enough of an annoyance. Look, for me, as a local, going to the Magic Kingdom is a bit of an annoyance compared to every other park.
Yeah.
Because it's the hardest park to get to.
You can't park at it.
Right? You can't park at it. You either need you're staying at a resort or have a reservation park at any of those. Yeah. So basically, if we're talking TTC, then a tram or a walk, then a monorail or a ferry boat, whatever, it's again, you add these little layers of annoyance to something, and it makes it good for Magic Kingdom, because probably it would be a lot more crowded if it were easier.
The removal from the real world is what he wanted, and it's look, at the same time, I understand it would be more convenient. I also understand the removal from reality.
Yeah.
And in a world where the monorail is efficient, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But we don't live in that world so much anymore.
But I think what I'm saying is, so you've jumped through a few hoops to get to the Magic Kingdom in the first place. And now you're in there and you got to jump through another hoop to go to this island. And then when you think about like, man, I need to go home pretty soon. You're like, oh man, now I got to wait for a raft. Then I got to wait for a monorail. Then I got to wait for a tram. Then I got to wait in traffic. You know what I mean? It's just, our time is valuable. And I think more than ever, people are not willing to take their time with stuff like this and go out there. So in that sense, the Rivers of America and Tom Sawyer Island in particular, don't have as much allure as they probably used to. And look, there were days in my life where I would go take that raft out there to the boat or to the island, and I would go and I would sit on the porch at Aunt Polly's and just chill. Yeah. Just sit there with, take some photos, vibe out for a half hour, take a little nap. It was a good time. And but I'd be lying if I said I do that a lot. Right? It's not a thing I do all the time. In fact, I'd probably go to Tom Sawyer Island once a year now. Yeah. And so I'm sure they're looking at this, right? They're paying attention to this. If there were an hour line for the rafts to get out there and back every day, Disney would think twice about getting rid of this area. But it's not that popular. People like it for the sort of ambiance that it helps create and to look at it.
And the intended audience of children, because it is a playground at the end of the day, and a playground that kids and the parents could enjoy together, which is kind of the whole point of the entire place. But kids don't feel compelled to go over there. It's not an exciting playground experience. Number one, from the other side of the river, it's not clear that's what it is. And number two, the kids don't know what it's supposed to be. Like, here's the thing. We talk about, and someone will bring up, kids still read, stories about Tom Sawyer. That's great. But for a generation of people, if you were a child in the 1950s, that meant a lot more to you, and it made a lot more sense to you, and you knew what it was, and you're like, oh, well, I love the Wild West. Like, that's what I watch on TV every day. And I watch Westerns, and I love that genre. And that worked for kids of that time. For kids in 2025, at least the Disney World audience, I'm not saying it applies to all of them, the tourist audience that comes to Walt Disney World, it doesn't apply to them. And you're going to tell me, even when I was a kid, it barely applied. And I would tell you, look at the attendance difference when I was a child between Tom Sawyer Island and the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playground. The Honey, I Shrunk the Kids playground was always mobbed. Because if you were a kid my age, you knew what that was. You got it. You're like, okay, oh, cool. And also you didn't have to ride a raft to it either, which helped a lot. But the other thing I want to say is, as far as like the serene place, park setting, natural beauty, when Disneyland was built, it was built in an orange grove in the middle of Anaheim, which was just down the road from a major metropolis in Los Angeles. People needed a space to escape, the hustle and bustle of the city. And having big green spaces made a lot of sense when you built that park in 1955. Having Holiday Land and the Big Island, all of that made a lot of sense. At Disney World, there is no shortage of land. So what people are saying they're going to miss about Tom Sawyer Island, they're going to miss this natural beauty, that river's not real. You know what's real? It's man-made, but it's very real, is the Seven Seas Lagoon. Think about that walkway from the Grand Floridian to the Magic Kingdom.
I wouldn't know. I never got to stay at the Grand Floridian as a kid.
That walkway didn't exist. But now you walk that walkway, and it gives you a feel of what the property was when they got there. There are moments where it's just trees and nature. There's always herons and other birds hanging out there. There's all sorts of wildlife along that path. You get to see the unspoiled trees that never got touched in the whole process. The monorail goes by occasionally, and then you have these beautiful vistas across the water of boats going by and these, dreamlike resort hotels, except for the big brown box, which is junk. But otherwise, these beautiful... That's why I threw a fit about the Polynesian building, about
Island
Tower. Because that now feels like Vegas to me. You're at the Polynesian, and you leave the Polynesian, and one step out of the old Polynesian, there's now a tower. There's no break, right? What was always cool about that transition there was you'd journey out of the Polynesian, and there are all these thick palm trees, like a lush jungle out there. Maybe it was luscious too, I don't know. But a lush jungle is there, and you travel out of that jungle past the beach, and then you'd come upon this serene little wedding pavilion, and then you take a few steps along the shoreline from there, and you arrived at this beach resort. There was transition space, there was a natural flow, and more of that park, like I said, more of that natural beauty was allowed to exist. So the hill I'm dying on is the perimeter of the Seven Seas Lagoon and not Tom Sawyer Island. Because I think at Walt Disney World, when you have Magic Kingdom, which is the most visited park in the world, you have to focus on capacity. I'm not saying you don't have to focus on giving people, a beautiful location to visit, because I think that they have to strive for that in this project. There has to be a babbling brook, and there has to be waterfalls, and there has to be big, impressive rock work, and it has to look beautiful. It has to, if it's going to be a place meant to represent natural beauty, it has to be as beautiful or more beautiful than what came before it in Tom Sawyer Island and the rivers of America. But at Walt Disney World, we're not Disneyland where you walk outside and there's an Esplanade and another park in downtown Disney. There is that natural beauty all across the property and a lot of park-like spaces that, even if you're not staying at a particular hotel, is available to you. And whether that's around the Seven Seas Lagoon, whether that's around Bay Lake, whether that's along the Sassagoula River at the Port Orleans resorts, there are a lot of places where you can go with not even park admission and enjoy a serenity and a beauty that's like Tom Sawyer Island. And some of those even have a free boat transportation you could take along them too. So look, it's been there for 50-something years. It is a connection to Walt. I understand that. But at the same time, I think Disney World is a different beast. And if you really want these big, beautiful, natural, park-like settings, they're all over Walt Disney World. And unfortunately, this park has 17 to 20 million people in it a year. And in order to get to that, I know there's a ton of expansion space behind the park. I understand that. But you have to get people to it. And you can't get people to it with the current river sitting there. And I'm sorry, I think they should utilize the space. I think they have to utilize the space. This isn't Country Bears, this isn't Great Movie Ride, this isn't MuppetVision. It isn't one of these things that was born at Walt Disney World that has an incredible historical significance to that particular place at least. I don't think it's the hill to die on. I think the Magic Kingdom will be a much more enjoyable place with a use of that land that more guests want to experience and big winding paths that lead out to another land that is completely new and replaces nothing, that will also add capacity and add to the enjoyment of that park.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, there was a time in this country where little kids, probably at the time, due to the time, particularly little boys, were going to go get they were dying to get their coonskin hat and go out to a fort in the frontier and pretend like they're fighting and
buy their
defending
big
a big
toy
fort
gun.
with
Remember
their
the
big
toy guns?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that is not as popular with kids anymore.
Yeah.
I think I don't know when the last time is I saw a kid wearing a coonskin hat in Disney World. I still think, going back to my idea of a pedestrian bridge, I still think that island would have been a perfect place to do like a New Orleans Square, so to speak. Yeah. To do the Tiana, to do a Tiana restaurant, to do a little attraction out there, and to kind of scratch that itch. Yeah. Now, whether or not you still do something different with Splash Mountain, whatever. Yeah. We can have that conversation another time. But I still felt like that was a good way to honor Tiana. If you wanted to honor this, especially, kind of the first African-American princess and all that stuff, you do a whole new land with all new things.
First
you don't
American
just redecorate or retheme a ride.
Yeah.
Now, I think they did an admirable job trying to retheme Splash Mountain to, if you came to us and said, Tom and Eric, you have no say in the matter. We are retheming Splash Mountain to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, and we Imagineered that, so to speak. I think they did an admirable job for the cards they were dealt. But I think if you want to honor that tradition, a whole New Orleans area on that island would have been a better way to do it, if you could provide some kind of pedestrian access to it.
I think the problem.
I think people don't. The Cars thing is the problem. Yeah. I think the fact that it's Cars, which is a beloved franchise.
It's about America.
Yeah, I know.
The original film is about Route 66, which is what Americans used after the Old West to see the American West.
But Route 66 is a distinctly west of Chicago and west type of thing.
Yeah.
It connects with those people, and I know it could connect here if we wanted to do a Cars land. Yeah. But to do this sort of, I think what people assume is going to be a sort of micro land, a sort of half-cocked Cars land that's not as immersive as the one in California, is what people are assuming. What's that?
It's a different thing.
Yeah.
It's putting the Cars characters in the Rocky Mountains and using them, how do we tell a story that takes place in the Rocky Mountains using IP we own? And the answer is the Cars characters would show, why would they be there? And they are specifically American characters. I know they're cars. I understand that. They still represent people, right? The story is still representative of human beings, even though they're talking cars. And that's a very American story. And so the lens, I don't know if you read this part, the lens through which the theme of Frontierland now is, what is it? It's heading west or heading into the American wilderness to create your own folktale, which makes sense. It's what the Country Bears are doing. It's what Tiana's doing. I understand that. And then the Cars characters are also venturing into the American wilderness to create their own folktale.
I think people have trouble wrapping their minds around what have we decided is the American frontier. Yeah. Where does it start and where does it end, and what's in the middle, right? And I don't know. We have a fort out there now that's like a frontier fort that probably would have been somewhere along a prairie, like Tom Sawyer Island, somewhere west of Missouri, in Missouri and west.
So specifically, Tom Sawyer Island and Diamond Horseshoe are Missouri.
Right, that's Missouri. But then you get into stuff the Country Bears are in Georgia.
Northwoods.
Yeah. But I mean, they've got the little sunbonnets from Florida. Or they used to have the sunbonnets from Florida. Yeah. It was a little kind of Smoky Mountain-y more than, and then you have sort of the far west and then the Rockies and then the far west, the sort of, spurs and shootouts in the
Pecos to
street
Big Thunder was
towns.
Arizona, but Splash then wasn't.
Right.
Splash was Georgia again.
Right. So I think from its genesis, we've had trouble kind of defining what the American frontier is.
But Disney, there are other Frontierlands where that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Disneyland, Disneyland and Disneyland Paris. It is a specific town in the American Old West, and that's always been that story. And at Disney World, that's never been the story, except when you went all the way out to Big Thunder.
Right. Yeah, I get it. And there's a theme at these parks of you can travel lots of rivers, right? You go on a Jungle Cruise, and how many rivers are you on? I don't know.
They're all the rivers of the
All
world.
the rivers of the world.
Yeah.
Right? Well, some very famous rivers of the
Yeah.
world. And the same thing with the rivers of America, although generally speaking, the Mississippi is what you're thinking of when you think of that, right? But to then add this story that we're in the Rockies is an interesting choice. I think it's not destined to fail. I think you can explain it and make a good story with it.
Yeah.
They've created an original character, which I'm sure you like.
Oh, I love J. Audubon Woodlore.
Yeah. Tell us about J. Audubon Woodlore.
Well, it's spelled like Autobahn, like the German
Yeah.
Autobahn, as opposed to Autobahn, the society,
Right.
which is what the other...
Birds.
Yeah, the actual Ranger Woodlore character who's connected to Humphrey the Bear, where he came from. So they're making a car version of him that's J. Autobahn Woodlore, and he is the park ranger for Piston Peak National Park, and he is part of the pre-show of the ride, the main attraction, where he will be in audio animatronics form, and he will tell you the lore of Piston Peak and specifically the story reason why you were there for the race. There is some lore to the race that is integral to the region and the park, and so there's a very specific reason we're there for that race.
So where do you think the entrance to the actual attraction is going to be? Like, are we
It's
going
in
to
the
have to walk all the way around?
You go up by
Or-
Mansion and you hook a left into the middle, and then it'll fork between the family attraction, which they still won't tell us anything about for some reason, or to the off-road rally race attraction.
So you're going to get there via like Liberty Square.
There's a left,
and
so you go past Mansion. There are signs as if you're entering a national park, and then you can split. You turn left to go into the space.
Okay.
Otherwise, there's a natural barrier. If you go around the natural barrier, you can be taken around to Big Thunder via. They're building more of those rainbow pools and geysers, which some, as you are in the cars area, they'll have tire shapes and things, and then they'll transition into more normal, our world as you get to Big Thunder.
Forgive me. It seems like at some point during the evolution of this, that we were told it was almost like Pacific Northwest at one point. Weren't they going to do something?
We assumed, I think,
Okay.
just based on
The trees and
the lodge and the trees and all of that, and instead we're going to the Rocky Mountain. Where do the Rocky Mountains go specifically? This is not my area of expertise.
I mean, there's a lot of Rocky Mountains in Colorado, and it kind
Yeah.
of runs north and south from there.
So their research trip was Rocky Mountain National Park, which
Okay.
is in Colorado. What region is Colorado considered?
It's the West, the American West, right? It's west of the Midwest.
The Mountain West region.
Yeah, that's a conference, isn't it? A football conference.
It is, yeah. Mountain West region.
Okay.
I mean, that's what this is saying, but this could be wrong. Western United States, one of the mountain states, showing four corners with Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. I guess it makes sense in cars because it wouldn't be terribly far for them to travel. I guess the
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest wouldn't have been either.
Yeah. Certainly closer if you were talking about Four Corners area.
But yeah, it's definitely not the Pacific. But I mean, we saw snow, we saw big, tall green trees, I think, and a lodge setting, we assumed Pacific Northwest, I think, and that's not the case.
Because the cars would all be like Subarus if they were in Oregon. They're like Subarus and pickup trucks. Is that?
Wow.
I don't know. So now we're in the Rocky Mountains, and I assume, we've seen some concept art, more concept art now, and that's going to be. It's hard to tell
We've
what
seen the
this.
fun map. We were shown things that they have not released and we're not allowed to show. But I would say Rocky Mountains. That's what it looked like.
But it's hard to tell what the scale is going to look like, right? How far in are they going on this? Right?
I will say, compared to the first concept art, the Piston Peaks look like they are very high up.
Yeah.
Very tall mountain. They have since morphed that. I think some of it is just the progression from initial concept and blue sky to reality, but some of it is also in the process of morphing from blue sky to reality, hearing feedback from people. And I think they heard people loud and clear that said, "Oh, if they get rid of all the water features, if there's no river, it's going to suck the life out of this park. Oh, I'm going to see a giant piston from Big Thunder and Liberty Square. And I'm sure some of that might have been true at the beginning of the project, or maybe they hadn't made it that far. Either could be true. I think they listened to people and heard their concerns, and the purpose of our call this week was, hey, we've made some headway in this project, and we want to tell you that now, it is going to be Piston Peak, but you're not going to see them from here, there, or the other place.
Do you think then this is going to be like a kind of a U-shaped? The mountains are going to be like in sort of a U shape, so you can't really view it from Frontierland, and you can't view it all the way around to Liberty Square.
The Imagineers made a joke on the call where they're like, funny enough, it's horseshoe shaped. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't on that call. I just pulled that out of my head, but
yeah, I mean, no, you would think based on the curvature of the river. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to build a barrier and then sit a ride in there, and you need if they're going to turn left to enter the ride, but they can go right to go around, then yeah, it would have to be horseshoe shaped.
I just think it's going to be interesting to see how they do the transition, right? Because we have, what you have at Epic Universe is very sharp, kind of artificial transitions, from Celestial Park, and then they go, you know what, we don't have to do a subtle, like you're walking along and suddenly the terrain suddenly starts to change in a subtle way that you don't even notice, and then all of a sudden it continues to change, and then you're in this new land. Now they're like, here's just a sharp portal. And we kind of do that at Disney World.
They do the transition a little bit. Yeah. As you get to different portals, there are things around the portal that more match where you're going. So in the case of, if you look at near Super Nintendo World, if you look at there's the little store outside which has the stars and everything on it, but the adjacent restaurant is Pizza Moon. Of course, there's Super Mario Galaxy. They are Italian plumbers. I'm not saying it's what we're going to see at Magic Kingdom.
I would say a better example, Tom, would be the styling of Celestial Park as you get, in general, but as you get close to the Harry Potter, the Ministry of Magic, it's already kind of Art Nouveau with these, and the vintage Coca-Cola sign and stuff. And it starts suggesting Europe.
Yeah.
And then you get in there, and there is that transition. I don't know that it's the same. I don't know if it's intentional anywhere.
Yeah, Oak and Star. The reason it's Oak and Star, it's the woods. You're heading to Darkmoor.
Okay.
So look, it's not. I'm not saying it's the same thing, because look, for a park where the story is portals, and portals are what take you to the worlds, should you see said worlds from the center? No, it doesn't make sense. Right. So, we all want to talk, and I know, I was castrated online for saying that sightlines matter. Literally, pop open that Disneyland 70th book, and there's a quote from Walt Disney in the first 50 pages that says, we're going to focus on the things that other amusement parks do not focus on, the things that don't make money, the things that no one would spend money or time on are the things we're going to focus on, is what he said to the people at WEG.
If I think about a place at the Magic Kingdom where there's sort of a subtle transition, I think if you walk past Pirates of the Caribbean and you kind of round around and you end up sort of, if you walk long enough, you end up kind of where the parade starts right there, then you're in Frontierland.
Fantasyland.
That's good, but if you cut through where you're by the magic carpet, the flying carpets, and you just walk through that little transition, you're in Frontierland, that one's a little bit that was kind of not great.
Liberty Square to Fantasyland.
Yeah.
With the Columbia Harbor House. It's a beautiful transition. Yeah. My favorite transition, though, of all time, Disneyland Paris, Fantasyland to Adventureland. Fantasyland's all European influence. It's very cool. You get to the back of Fantasyland, there's Peter Pan's flight. And then there's a covered walkway. And on the other side of Peter Pan's flight, on the other side of that covered walkway is Pirates of the Caribbean. And I love that transition. But then also, at the other, so that's the right side of the transition. The left side of the transition is Pinocchio's restaurant. And you're sitting there and you go, how? Okay, Pirates to Pirates, I understand that transition. How did they get Pinocchio to Pirates of the Caribbean? With
Are you
Monstro,
asking me?
With Monstro, there's the shipwreck.
Right.
The restaurant goes from German influence to a shipwreck inside. The shipwreck and the rocks are the transition on the other side into the Pirates of the Caribbean area. It's magnificent.
What I love about these things that we're discussing is what we have now is this opportunity for people to really show their creativity.
Yeah.
Through this. And because what makes little sense to me is a Hudson River haunted mansion next to the Rocky Mountains, right? So
Yeah.
I have faith that they'll be able to do it, but it's going to take some doing, and I think it's an opportunity for them to really show us something cool.
Things that on paper do not make sense next to each other, being put next to each other artfully is a tradition that goes back at Walt Disney Imagineering to the beginning. It's always been a thing. Think about Epcot. Think about World Showcase. There are so many pavilions in World Showcase that have architectural feats next to each other that in real life are hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart from each other in the larger countries. They all fit together seamlessly. No one walks up to those pavilions and goes, oh, this doesn't make any sense. There's never those moments in those World Showcase pavilions because artists sat down and they figured it out in a way that your brain does not walk into that pavilion and go, well, that shouldn't be.
Right, so I could definitely say, like, walking into, I hate to quit, I hate to keep bringing Epic up, but you walk into their Paris, Wizarding Paris, and it feels lived in, it feels real, it feels like you're really in Paris, in the time period and everything else. And then when you think about it, you're like, oh, well, Epcot, you just kind of, there's just like a Eiffel Tower and there's some stuff that suggests France, but their goal wasn't to be immersive, their goal was to show you tasteful little tidbits of their country and their architecture of all these places. You go to Japan and there's Himeji Castle and there's Mitsukoshi and there's
These are things that are very far apart.
all these things that are very far apart and don't make sense. You know, you go to Italy and you have I forget the name of the tower. I apologize, from Venice. Saint. I'm sorry. I'm preparing for a trip to Italy, and there's a lot of landmarks to think about. And then the Trevi Fountain, right?
Yeah.
You have all these things, and some of these parts of the world are very old.
Yeah.
So you go to Rome, and you're like, oh, the Colosseum. Oh, Rome's got the Colosseum and the Sistine Chapel. These things are thousands of years apart, right? So, like, Michelangelo used to walk daily past the Colosseum, which was 1,400 years old when he was alive. It was an old rundown ruin when he was alive, and Michelangelo has been dead for hundreds of years now. You know, it's like you have these sort of conglomerations of stuff at a place like Rome. But a lot of these other places, they just can just give you sort of a greatest hits and blend them all together in a way that's pretty artful.
Which
pretty cool.
is what Magic Kingdom has always done. It has always been the travel through time. From Liberty Square to Frontierland has always traveled through regions in time. It's not a new thing. The problem now is it's 2025 and we're throwing cartoon characters in, which we've done a lot at the Magic Kingdom. You know, we're throwing cartoon characters in the middle of Frontierland and people are up in arms about it, and I totally understand that. But I think that it can be accomplished. I think they can make it relevant for a new generation of people. The same way they made Country Bears relevant to a new generation of people while still keeping them the Country Bears. They are still, like, we still make fun of Trixie. We're still allowed to do that. And we still make fun of her, and she's, you know, she has a redemption arc now, but she's still the character she was before, and so is Henry, and so is Big Al. But they are now relevant to people who are younger than us. If you make everybody happy, and I think that's what you have to do, is how do we represent the American frontier, not necessarily the Old West, but the American frontier, in a way that is relevant to all generations. We have lived with the Cars characters now for 20 years. They are a part of Disney that is indelible. They're never going away. You have to learn to live with them.
If the planes show up, I'm out.
The planes are not showing up. They knew better.
I'm just looking at...
There was a moment in the call where they're like, so yeah, Piston Peak National Park is in Planes Fire and Rescue. We are not at all replicating anything from Planes Fire and Rescue. It just happens to be the same place.
And if any French spy cars show up, I'm out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean that I have watched Cars. I have seen the first Cars movie like 150 times. I have seen Cars 2 once, and I refuse. As one of the biggest Cars fans in the world, I refuse to put Cars 2 on my television ever again in my life. I will never watch that movie again.
I'm just looking at the articles that we published today because first look, the fun map. So we've kind of got a little bit of that. We've talked about that.
Yeah.
We've talked about the railroad. The closing date, we haven't talked about that, July 6th. So yeah, in a 1 month period, we're basically losing MuppetVision 3D and the Rivers of America.
We had a nice Rivers of America at least the day after. I mean, they should have just said it on stage, but we won't revisit that fiasco again. Still really mad at Josh tomorrow for that, by the way. Oh, but my media credential. No, I'm going to be honest. That was the wrong thing to do. They should have been honest with people and told people what they were doing. And the fact that they waited so long on Muppets means they knew they were in the wrong, that they knew how people were going to react. And, Rivers of America, they should have said on stage too, but they didn't. But at least, what was it? It was a day later, 2 days later, they admitted to it.
I would have a lot more respect for someone getting up there and saying, look, this wasn't easy. We've talked about this. We've whiteboarded this every which way we can. And unfortunately, we're going to have to make the difficult decision to close MuppetVision 3D and let everybody get it out of the system. Because what they did with that announcement, even when they made the official Disney Parks thing, was like, oh, they're just rolling on across the park to the rock and roller coaster with the, animal, Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem. It just didn't seem, it seemed like they glossed over the fact that
because Rock and Roller Coaster wasn't planned until they realized what a mistake they had made, but no one at Walt Disney World wanted to renege on it. Yeah. The same thing with this. They've powered through this, but I think they handled it right today. They trotted Walt Disney Imagineering out, and the Imagineers told us all the reasons why they believe in what they're doing and all the artistic steps they're taking to do this right. And people can agree with that or they cannot, but at least they've defended their stance in a way that is logical. You could still disagree, you could still not like it, but they've given you a reasoning behind it, as opposed to Muppets, which we have received no reasoning. There is no actual reasoning. Muppets is not actually the thing being replaced by the Monsters, Inc. roller coaster. We don't know what's going in the space of MuppetVision 3D. All we know is it's a theater show of some kind, and to be closing...
Untrainable monster.
To be... That was Bob Chapek. To be losing MuppetVision after 30-something years with the historical significance of that particular attraction and not know what on earth is replacing it is psychotic. Psychotic. Yeah. As opposed to the river where at least they told you what they're doing and they've reasoned with what they're doing. You can agree or disagree, but in Muppets, we can't agree or disagree because we don't even know what it is.
We're in this tremendous era of expansion, but it feels like a lot of times instead of expansion, what we get is ending one thing and replacing it with another.
It feels to me, Eric, that we're the only country in the world that gets ready for a war once we're already in it.
Yeah. Now they're going to cut the Navy so it'll fit in the bathtub.
Now they're going to get rid of the Rivers of America so it can fit in the bathtub too.
But the whole sort of to create you must destroy mentality. But the reality is that Walt Disney World was enough land to what was Walt's quote about?
There's enough land here to oh my goodness. There's enough land here to hold all the ideas we could possibly imagine, something of that effect.
Yeah. So you have this blessing of size.
Yeah.
And if you want advantages, and I'm sorry to bring Universal up again, but we are in this sort of. A lot of people think this is in response to building a new theme park at Epic. If your goal is to respond to them, your biggest advantages are the strength of your IP, right, which they've been maybe relying too much on, and your size of contiguous space to do things. And it seems like they're very reluctant to do anything with their existing space and to only do things within that footprint that exists. Now, they're a little boxed in with Hollywood Studios.
Their non-existing space.
Yeah. And then, but I mean, look, that's a big thing at Universal, right? You have to leave the Universal Orlando Resort to go to the rest of the Universal.
It's called an entirely different campus. That's how far away it is.
By the way, there was, you hear the dumbest things on the internet, but somebody was saying that like Epic Universe is so much bigger than any other theme park in Orlando because they were counting. They said it was like what 750 acres, and they're like, but that people are like, but that's counting all of the land, including where the 3 new hotels are, and like, you know, bus stations and everything else.
My favorite thing, my favorite comment today on Instagram, somebody said, actually, I want to find it.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you what,
This is going to be unhinged.
I really want to find it.
But I think what you have at Disney is all this land, and they are expanding the footprint of the Magic Kingdom.
Oh, here you go.
Not nearly enough.
Remember, Universal is down the street building its parks up and not destroying their history. To which all the comments, of course, were, you mean like Confrontation, Jaws, Earthquake, Back to the Future, Hanna-Barbera, Hitchcock, Terminator 2, 3D.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice. There's, yeah.
Yeah, I think a big criticism was like, hey, they built this park in a time that took Disney to build one roller coaster. Now, Disney builds their roller coasters mostly indoors, and they're going to take longer, where Universal basically just bolted together a couple things that arrived on a truck. But that blessing of size that Disney has is really an advantage they should be leveraging. And I feel like there's got to be more, you know, there's got to be more space to do some of these things they want to do. We're never going to get that 5th gate, right? Let's just accept that. We're not getting a 5th gate.
Yeah.
But our expansion could be, we could actually do expansion as a Disney fandom. Expansion could be, you know, actually making things bigger and not just knocking one thing down to replace it with another.
Yeah.
Confrontation.
I actually responded and said that's the dumbest comment I've read in 18 years of my career.
But is it, Tom?
And then I was told, this is why you have the reputation you have. And I said, good. Post rage bait, what do you think you're going to get? That's my favorite thing about this community is people try to enrage people, and then you come back at them and go, well, that's actually pretty dumb. And then they're like, you were mean to me. Yeah. That was mean. Like, all right, like, come on. You tried to enrage people. People called you on it, and then you cry about it. Like, you're not the victim. It doesn't make you the victim. It makes you the perpetrator.
Oh, internet. So bad.
Katie is now off to get the waffle cones after I'm done removing people from our comments.
Your attitude, you could use a waffle cone right now, Tom. You got very angry at some...
I'm sorry, I've been doing this for 19 years. I don't care anymore. I don't. This community gets what it deserves so often. Not to be that guy.
I'm just perfectly content in most cases to let someone be wrong on the internet without me being involved. Let them be dumb on their own. Let them wander around in the woods banging into
look,
trees.
I love Epic, and if you've been watching the honest reviews, you know that. Is it perfect? No, because nothing is. Literally, I can dissect my favorite attraction in the world and tell you a handful of very tiny things about it that I would change. That doesn't mean it's not spectacular. That doesn't mean it's not good.
I actually think Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is perfect.
I don't know.
No notes.
No, I have no.
I have no notes.
I have no.
What are your notes?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I don't like that noise that the things on the boardwalk make. Like that weird squeak. And I'm like, what?
Really
like
takes
that's
you out
not
of it.
what a falling barrel sounds like. What is that noise? It's like squeaking. It's wood. It's a wood barrel falling. It's squeaking.
All day long,
Eat waffle cones if I were a wealthy man.
All right.
All right, so
Back from the freezer. We did have to change batteries in that camera. Cheers.
it's absolutely better.
Yeah, it's better.
They weren't in there long enough.
They were in the freezer.
They're not that cold.
Want one that you haven't been
Well, he was
holding?
holding them the whole time I was changing.
You think that makes a difference?
Yeah, you held it for a good minute and a half there,
Oh, yeah.
right? Good, I can pretend through the magic of TV that I only had one.
No, they're way better cold. Yeah.
7?
Yeah. 7.
There you have it. Bucky's Waffle Cones. Welcome to the 7 Club.
We should just do an episode where I respond to bad comments.
That's something people do.
Just a live stream of
It is.
Tom responding in real time to people on Instagram.
That'll be my test streams from now on. I'll just sit Tom up there while I'm testing things.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes.
I think this wraps up our opinions on the Rivers of America. I want to hear yours. I mean, as long as they're polite. I've heard some hyperbolic opinions on this thing.
I like on
both
news
extremes.
today during the show. I literally said, "You don't have to. I don't have to agree with you. You don't have to agree with me. But we can certainly all still like each other and respect each other's opinions." And that's not what has happened.
And the first
in
comment was like,
Whoa!
we got editors.
"Do we?"
Not really. We're a bit busy at the moment.
Pretty much.
We have a week to get this out.
That's pretty much it. And I said, I again commented on the Epic Universe thing where I said sightlines matter, and I know like everyone made fun of me on X for saying that sightlines matter. And I said, well, look, we had a whole several minutes of this call with Walt Disney Imagineering where they said sightlines matter.
Right.
And you told us they matter, and so we're telling you we agree they matter. And I said, it says it tells you you're wrong. If you think sightlines do not matter, you are actually wrong. Walt Disney said it, Current Day Imagineering said it, guests have said it to Imagineers, which is why they're focusing on it. How many other ways can you be told you're incorrect about this thing mattering?
No.
That'd be like if someone said, cast costumes don't matter. What the cast members are wearing doesn't matter. Yes, it does.
But no,
Of course
you're
it
perfectly.
does.
Someone's perfectly entitled to think sightlines don't matter,
Why?
and those people should be perfectly happy at
Six-
Busch Gardens and Six Flags and SeaWorld.
Yeah.
And go to amusement parks and.
But that was
the rest
the
of us can
argument.
go to theme
It
parks.
wasn't me saying like, oh, sightlines in every aspect of life matter. That wasn't what I was saying. I'm saying in a major theme park where immersion is touted, which would be Disney and Universal,
Yeah.
sightlines matter because you're touting how immersive your worlds are.
Right.
Your worlds are not immersive if I can see things I'm not supposed to see in them.
Right.
That's the end of the argument. There is no argument for that. At Six Flags, it doesn't matter. Obviously, there it doesn't matter. That's not what I was talking about.
All right. Well, this has been an exhilarating episode of the WDW News Today podcast. Thank you for joining us. Comment, let us know how you feel, and of course, be nice. Except like to people
not
who
gonna be
say dumb
nice.
things
I
on the
don't
internet,
care.
and be very mean to them
I don't
because
care
it
anymore.
helps a
Well,
lot.
you have the reputation you have. And it's probably just because all of you are terrible people. Anyway.
Have you ever heard that phrase though, Tom? That if you meet a terrible person in the morning, big deal. You met a terrible person, but if you meet terrible people all day, maybe you're the terrible person.
I don't think I meet terrible people all day.
Yeah, I don't
I
think
think
so.
I only meet them in the comments section.
It's because
on social media.
it's because too much of your life is spent reviewing people's stupid comments on
Correct.
social media.
You're absolutely right. I have a job that requires too much interaction with people that don't know what they're talking about in many cases.
But I mean, there's no professional reason for you to read that guy's comment. There's no job reason that you need to see somebody's stupid opinion.
I saw it, and it was ridiculous, and I wanted to let him know it was ridiculous. Universal cares about their history. What? Huh? What on earth have they ever done that would
look,
lead
they
you to believe
sell a
that?
lot of merch based on attractions that used to be in their parks.
People knock Disney for selling Figment merchandise when he doesn't have a good ride. Universal does it with 10 different things.
Yeah.
It's nuts. Jaws, Back to the Future have been beaten to death merchandise-wise the last 5 years, and they still refuse to do nearly anything with them. And maybe with Back to the Future, I'll eat those words because they'll do something in the British park, but I mean, I guess FanFest nights we got something finally. But in the end, like still, those rides are long gone, and in many cases, I would dare say, almost none of them were replaced with something that everyone would agree is better than what was there, right? Please tell me how the Simpsons ride is an improvement on Back to the Future.
All right, we'll see you next time on a WDW News Today podcast.
I will say the ice cream, the Diagon Alley ice cream,
See you real
the
soon.
Diagon Alley ice cream is better than the ice cream was outside of Jaws, but
It is good.
we'll see you real soon. Remember, amity means friendship, which I don't have because I'm the worst human to ever live.
God.
Bye.